This is the FRC Roundtable, coming to you all the way from Minnesota. Your host team 2052 Nightcrawler presents this weekly FRC gathering where FIRST Robotics competition teams take cooperation off the field. Share your knowledge, give and get advice, solve a challenge, or celebrate what makes your team special. 3, 2, 1, go!
Welcome, everyone, to the FRC Sunday Night Roundtable. My name is Scott Davis. I'm a mentor with Team 2052 Nightcrawler. Normally, I would have a student co-host with me, but tonight, all of my students are trying to catch up on homework from after participating in missing classes for 2 to 3 days for our Week 1 Regional. So I'll be doing the intro script for you. A couple of housekeeping notes before we get started. The FRC Roundtable is recorded for YouTube and Spotify. You must be 13 years or older to participate in the live call. If you are comfortable, please share your cameras when you're speaking. The roundtable is no longer exclusive to Minnesota teams. Mentors and students from all FRC teams are welcome to join us. And for more information, including our complete privacy policy, please visit team2052.com/roundtable. And with that, we're just going to jump right into tonight's topic. We're not going to do a what's on the wiki topic. I know that we've got a few new things out there, but I am running behind on my preparation for this after we unloaded the trailer tonight. So we're going to skip the wiki. But if you're interested in what's on our wiki, you can find our wiki at team2052.com/wiki. We try to share the processes we follow, advice we have, things that we do. In fact, we even our packing list for what's in our pit. You might find something out there and go take a look. So tonight's topic is what we learned at Week 1. And this is going to be an open discussion. In fact, I'm really hoping that I do very little of the discussion of tonight because I have lost my voice from the regional. So if you have something that you want to say, by all means, jump in, share your question, share your comment, share your observation. Don't wait for me to prompt you. I'd love to have this be a very open discussion with people jumping in whenever they have something to say. Please do that. So without further ado, does anyone want to kick us off with any observations or comments they saw from the Week 1 regionals? Also, don't feel like you have to raise your hand. If there's dead air, just jump in with your comment.
I had one observation on the Lake Superior, the Northern Lights Regional. There were more robots that seemed to be bricked or non-operational than I've seen in the last, 5 or so years that I've been involved as a mentor or a parent.
Yeah, I was going to say, I would second that just in general of there are so many broken robots in Week 1 Duluth. It was kind of a game of survival, honestly, like who could just last longest and still have maybe 3 working robots by the end of playoffs. And that increased your chances of winning greatly. And crazily enough, it was our selling point to Lightning Turtles, who was an awesome captain of why they should have drafted us over the crazy high firepower triple barrel shooters. Is some of those were breaking down in qual matches, and our robot made it on the field every single match and ran every single match. We couldn't have made another one. We absolutely destroyed our robot in the finals 3, trying to get the win, I guess, and it wasn't ready to go again.
Stacy, when you say brick, do you mean that they didn't move off the line? They just sat there the whole time? Or do you mean what Patrick's referring to is a lot of robots broke down?
I would say some of both. I know we had a number of matches with 2472 where we were the only robot on our alliance that was rolling. Between not even getting off of the line to getting what I guess I referred to as beached on the fuel or somehow breaking mid-match. There were, I would say, probably 40% of the matches we played in qualifying, we were the only one that rolled the whole time. And we had one match where we had a programming challenge where we didn't roll.
I will say that
higher than normal.
Nightcrawler experienced something that we've never seen before. We had a radio would not connect to the field, and we had to pull our robot off the field on match 3. Brian, our FTA, was on the field, couldn't figure it out. We went back to the pits. We had 3 CSAs in our pit. Could not get the radio to do what it was supposed to do. We finally ended up putting on our backup radio, and were able to get back in the matches. But yeah, we had a radio just completely go down. I thought I had heard somebody on Lake Superior may have had the same issue.
Yeah, we also had a. Hold on, can y'all hear me?
Yep, we can hear you now.
Yeah, us on 2530 also had like our radio mysteriously just not work for several practice matches. Was any of y'all's radios like the new V1.5 version? Because we swapped ours out to like a V1 radio and then it worked.
That's exactly what happened to us. Our 1.5 radio stopped working, and we went back to the 1.0 radio.
Oh.
Yeah, have we ever had a regional where the top 2 teams in a regional missed matches? Because the GOAT missed a match also, so.
Yep.
I mean, that's really odd, so.
Yeah,
I
don't
kind of think
remember
part of
when
it's the bump. I think part of it, though, is the bump. Going over that bump is rough.
Defense was super heavy, though. Once you started getting later in the day on Saturday, I mean, those are some hard hits, like over the bump, landing on the other robot, all kinds of stuff inside the frame perimeter, constantly. Like, man, you better have spare parts. If you're coming to week 2 or week 3, anything that sticks outside that robot, you better have 2 or 3 of them.
I would echo what Jesse said. We lost a swerve in match 1, or our first match.
Yeah, and to say, Jesse, it's not just parts that are outside the robot. You have spare parts for the things that are inside your robot as well. It just seemed like, I don't even know how many turrets and shooters got ripped off at Lake Superior, but it was multiple. People were just dragging them, or I don't know, like the impacts and collisions were a lot, as well as that bump is 0 forgiving. If you're a trench bot, you have a significant advantage, especially one of like Citrus or whoever, like those style bots, Patriotics that have huge hopper trench bots. They definitely can do some damage, and they don't need to constantly wear on their robot going over that bump.
Would you say that most of the damage was done through defense?
From what I saw, yeah, probably.
I would agree with that.
That might be the case. Lake Superior was definitely a little bit more defensive heavy, and I don't know. We played defense we played defense on practice day. That was our style from the get-go. We played offense on our on cycles and played defense on our off cycles every single time. And a lot of people started following suit, where defense became basically a norm. Like anyone who was a high scoring robot was going to get defended every single time. And it was brutal. There was nowhere to hide. Like you think you can hide, and they're still coming.
The thing I would caution people on defense is, I saw it in the finals and a couple other matches. If you're defending that last 20 seconds or whatever, and you're on the other end, if they don't have to have a climber. They don't have to be able to climb at all. But if they're touching that platform or that post and you touch them, that's a 30-point swing probably.
Yes and no. Like I have no idea if it was intentional or not. Like we had opponents taking out turtles on the tower for those 30 points, because 30 points was nothing compared to what turtles could put up in a hopper full. Like it maybe it was completely legit and it was just accident, but it felt like, holy cow, like we should be able to put up 70 more points right now, and we just couldn't get shots off with them.
Yeah, that's true. If they have a really high potential, you might have to sacrifice those points.
We actually we have 2 L3 climbs. We can't L3 climb. But if you look on Statbotics, we've climbed L3 twice because we got bumped twice while in the last 30 seconds. So
good job, Jeremy.
Thanks. Yeah, the engineering challenge of L3. We solved it. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah.
25 was at Bluff Country, and I didn't watch every match by a long shot, but I would say that there wasn't a ton of defense played until playoffs. Kind of a rarer thing, just as an anecdote from what you guys are describing.
Lightning Turtles got played defense against us. Maybe, I don't know. I think we didn't get played defense against or defended against in 2 to 3 matches, maybe. I mean, it was, for us, it was brutal. I'm amazed our robot worked for as long as it did.
Team 3630 would like to apologize to Team 3100 for the amount of times we rammed you. The type of defense that we had to play to avoid pin counting was the type of defense I hate playing, was that stupid ram type defense, but it's almost the only way to avoid penalties. I wonder if we should, I would love for that rule of pin counting to be rethought, because otherwise it's just going to encourage, you know, those second picks to just ram and ram and ram and ram.
You wouldn't want to eliminate the ramming. You'd want pinning to be more of a choice.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting.
Well, I mean, like, it just from a, like, I don't know, like my heart goes out to how much time gets put into like putting together a robot, and then just watching just watching just brutal just hits one after another, and then the brutal turnaround time of fixing the wreckage afterwards is just, I don't know. But maybe I would just say that's my just personal opinion, not necessarily like the game strategist opinion necessarily.
I think one thing we've noticed was, like any year, it's important to op test your robot. A few times our robot came back working, you know, it was operational, no issues, but found that, you know, our shaft screw was backed out and the pulley was just hanging on by hope and a prayer. So, you know, always op test and check like all the bolts on spinning shafts immediately. I mean, there were several times where we came back. One time that it came off and the bearing came out of its race, out of its spot, and it melted part of the polycarb bearing hole. We had to add a few hats to that to make sure the robot could keep working. So, you know, lots of vibration, lots of high RPMs. Make sure you're checking every little piece before it becomes catastrophic.
Our last playoff match, that literally happened to us. Our intake stopped working because a bolt spun out on a pulley. So we couldn't intake a ball for like almost 2 minutes of a 2-minute, 40-second match. Heartbreaking. So yeah, I'm with you. Gotta check the pulley bolts. We're adding that to our list for sure.
Yeah, this year we really emphasized the use of Loctite or those large head bolts with the nylon patch, where we can't use Loctite. And I believe I spoke with, I think it was Full Metal Jackets. They found out, I don't know if it was earlier in the season or at this competition, but that their swerve modules weren't Loctited. So they had one just come undone. I want to say it was on Thursday.
But as y'all know, be careful with Loctite and polycarbonate. They don't play.
Yes, we also had to emphasize that as well.
Jesse, did I hear you say that they were awarding a level 3 climb just for contacting the tower, even if they weren't attempting to climb? You said it doesn't even matter if you have a climber?
Correct. Yes, correct. Yeah, we got, like, if you look at Statbotics, we literally it says we climbed L3 twice. We don't have it.
Because I'm looking at the rule book, and the rule book only says that you get a level 3 climb if you're off the ground when contact is made.
But you should get the major foul points, right?
Yeah.
The 15, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought they were calling a major foul if you were touching the side post, but if you were off the ground, you got the 30.
It's
Yeah,
hard
it's
to
a major.
tell.
It is a major foul if you're touching the tower in the last 30 seconds. But if they're giving you the awarding, the climb ranking point, that according to the rules here, you should only be awarded a level 3 climb if you're off the ground when
We
contact.
didn't get the ranking point. We just got the 30 points.
Oh, well, then maybe you got two. You may have gotten 2 major fouls then, right? Because a major foul is 15, isn't it?
You might have got just hit two different times.
Right.
But
the
they
refs
shouldn't
were-
award 2 fouls for well, can they?
Well,
I don't know.
That
if
was
you look-
weird. We got absolutely hammered 3 times. One by a robot, a second time by a different robot, and then a third time by the first robot, and we only got 1 penalty for that. And we were actually trying to climb, and they're like, nope, they didn't give it to us, and we're like, but we're legitimately trying to get 10 points, and they just said, nope, you get 15 points for that. And I felt like it was not necessarily correct, but we didn't know either, and we moved on. It seemed weird to me. If you were attempting to get a traversal climb there for 30 points, you were going to get only 15, and you weren't off the ground because we couldn't get hooked on because we just kept getting smashed.
Well, you have to be touching it.
Yeah, we were touching it, and they just kept ramming us, and
Right.
by them backing up and ramming us, and then a second robot backing up and ramming us, we never could actually clip on and start climbing, and it just was like, oh, I don't know what we're supposed to do right now.
There were many fewer climb attempts than I had expected. I know we left ours off and we're going to put it on for playoffs and just decided not to. It was easier to score more fuel than to try and climb and leave your robot exposed.
Yeah, I think as far as the climb goes, and maybe this will change, but the only real viable way is if you know there's other climbers there, enough other climbers where you can realistically get them in quals to get that RP, and then take it off during playoffs because you can probably score more balls. I think is probably the viable climb situation at the moment. Maybe I'm wrong.
Cloquet actually did get the RP. They legitimately climbed in auto, had a double climb at the end game, and got a penalty, which did get them to 55 points or something. I think they were the first team to earn the RP. And it was through penalty, but they did actually earn an RP.
That was the only one at Lake Superior where the RP was given out.
That is correct. Yeah.
I saw there was one match in Oklahoma and one match in Brazil that had the RP, and they both got it legitimately without any penalties.
Yeah, we considered doing it with Mariner when we were with them, and we attempted it with Cloquet. It was the only time we ever ran that auto. And we've never tested it. We made it the morning of, and we missed it by about 2 inches of the post, but it's just not worth it. Our center disrupt auto was so much better to rob all the giant tanks of their fuel. If you watch our finals, Full Metal got 1 fuel in their auto, and it was because we bolted out there instantly and pushed all the fuel away from them. And I think with Turtles, we won auto every time. And it was part of it is they had a really good auto, and then we would make we would go out there, get something and make them. And we happened to find a kind of a gem in the draft that could make 8 preloads. They didn't have an intake. They literally could not get another fuel unless they went to the outpost, but they could make 8 preloaded fuel to start the match, which was amazing. And then they just played D the entire time.
What do you guys think about human players? That shocked me, especially in quals. They were swinging autos a lot, and they were swinging matches frequently.
Yes.
Feeding those human players. There's teams that lost in finals because they did not feed the human players.
Yeah,
absolutely.
It was a bigger influence than we thought it would be. Definitely.
You mentioned that team, Jesse, on Slack, the Whistle Punks. I'm serious. I really hope there is footage of that human player station somewhere out there. That was one of the most fun alliances to watch work. Just a rookie team of very young kids, and they fed the humans like crazy, and they would go 24 for 24 shooting, and it was literally a system of them shooting jump shots like 3-pointers, and they would swish basically every shot. Kid would sit on his knees, hand him up like a ball to each kid, grab 2 more, hand him, grab 2 more, and then he would shoot the very last one like fadeaway jumper and put it in every time. And it was a thing of beauty. It was like, I don't know, like, I know people want to see the robots do their thing, but like, I thought it was awesome watching those kids just embrace that role, and they owned it.
Yeah, I mean, there's probably matches where human players scored 50 plus points if they were being fed the whole match. Like it's crazy. And I was watching a little bit of Colorado at the end here. There's no human players doing anything on the dozen matches I watched or half a dozen matches I watched. So,
well, it's a great strategy to pivot to if you break down as well, and you know, if you're left being nothing but a defense spot, you know, you can still go ram into that wall and shove balls through to the human players. And there were a few times with our alliances or other alliances where the human players were not seeing the balls come through down lower. They just weren't. They were looking up, watching the game. It's like any human player thing, right? You have to be situationally aware. But they'll miss balls down below. But if you have dialed in human players looking for that, that's another, you know, it's not inconsequential in some matches. It's not going to be consequential in a 720-point match, but sometimes it will be.
I on Northern Lights, there were multiple matches where the human players scored most of the points. I think there was one match where both alliances scored fewer than 30, and I suspect that 25 of those 30 were probably scored by the human players. I think maybe the preloads and autos, some of them went in, and otherwise it was all human players. It was a lot of fun to watch. I saw a couple of alliance where those students were over 80% accurate, and they just nailed every single one, like you were talking about, Patrick.
I posted a link to on the FUM Slack channel of a match that was all human players. And the funny part is the last 2 go in after the buzzer. And that's actually what swung the match. So it's actually kind of fun to watch.
I think we're going to see a lot less of that, though, as the weeks go on. Robots are going to get better. I think it makes sense that week 1 we had a lot of human player interaction. But I don't expect to see a lot more of that as the weeks go on. It'll be interesting to see how the robots improve.
Yeah, the triple barrel shooting is just crazy ability. Like, but for week 1, if people are competing, I mean, I think it's the same argument. Like, more teams should just make Kitbot and run with it. Like, the Whistlepunks Kitbot was fantastic. Like they had a ton of fun. They had a ton of success. They were a captain. And they just kept running and running and running because there weren't weird over the bumper intakes that just shattered and broke all the time. And I guarantee they had more fun than a lot of teams that just stressed and tried to repair nonstop. I think one of my other main talking points why I hopped on tonight is stats for scouting. If you're only counting on Statbotics or Blue Alliance, is tough. There are so many robots that were hard to scout because they just did not work for an entire match or an entire 4 matches, where their numbers would get completely thrown off in Statbotics or Blue Alliance, where like if you had like actual physical scouts with clickers and like clicking and counting how many fuel they made, our scouting data was so much better than anything that we could find online. It was not even close. Like, we didn't look at anything else. That was all we used. And it helped us so much in the draft and selling ourselves, as well as knowing who to play D on, since we were a D-bot. We had actual numbers that were associated to every robot, not just like somehow, you know, mesh them together type things.
Yeah, the disparities this year are maybe the worst I've ever seen. Like, the good ones, the top 5 versus the bottom 5, like, oh my, they're it is. It's like a high school football team playing a professional football team. Like it's not even close.
Yeah, but like OPR on the bottom 5 is just match related. It's not really the robot. Because if you're
Right.
with somebody that's really good and they break, then your numbers go down, and it doesn't matter what you have done.
I felt like I was watching Northern Lights and I was watching Alliance Selection, and I can't remember at what point it was, but there was a very clear break of when people stopped picking another Alliance captain, and they were digging into the 20s and into the 30s into the calls ranking, because the disparity, like you had mentioned, there were clearly like, these are the robots that are in the top, I don't even know, 1 to 5, 1 to 6 there. And then the gap got really big, and you were digging deep. You were digging deeper earlier than I think I've ever seen in a competition, when you were like Patrick was saying, you're leaning on your stats, you're looking at what robots did really well while they worked, because maybe they were broken a couple of matches or things weren't happening. And you really had to lean heavily in your scouting data to go find those robots that could perform well, but maybe didn't perform well every match.
These were also small regionals. I mean, a lot of us in Minnesota probably haven't really. I know I never experienced less than maybe 50 teams. This whole 42 team thing makes drafting the top 24 a lot. It's just not as much depth, not as many opportunities. It was fun. I liked it. More qual matches and tighter turnarounds and more to do and less sitting around. I loved all that. Faster load in, faster load out. But it does make Alliance Selection more. You have to get more creative anyway.
That's a really good point, Sam. We've never competed at a regional below 50. This is, at least in the 11 years that I've been on the team, this regional is the smallest regional we've ever participated in. I doubt that we've ever been even below 54, 56. So yeah, that's a great point. Smaller pool to pick from, but really, really have to lead on your scouting data.
We ended up ending quals at 20th, and we were the first pick of the 4th Alliance. Just as an idea of Lake Superior, our match schedule was wild. No excuses. We were broken a lot, so it's not like that. But it was challenging. All of the qual matches getting up there, and the schedule quirks were a little weird with 42 as well. Just to the point you were just talking about, we were against a team, and then we were with a team, and then we played against them 2 matches in a row. So we were like on the same schedule as a team for 3 matches of our 11. I just thought that was kind of a weird little quirk as well, and that happened 2 different times in our 11 matches. But yeah, again, just speaking to the drafting low point, that's all I wanted to say. Because if something breaks and you don't get the 3 rank points, I mean, like getting any rank points to like help with your ranking is so hard. It's so hard. Even getting 100 was like really, really difficult if something was messed up or like some communication breakdown happened. So the 3 or 0 was brutal. And I think looking even at the ranking point averages compared to last year, like if you were in the 2s, you were in the 15 or above, you know. And that's not even like a winning, you know, that's not winning a majority of your matches sometimes. So anyway, I just thought the ranking point thing is very wild this year with 3 or 0. That's what it felt like a lot of times, or 4 or 0.
So can I go back to the numbers that Jim was pointing out? So any idea why week 1s are 42, but then Great Northern is at 50 for week 2? Is it just because no other teams wanted to be week 1, or do they like to?
There were about 40 teams in the Twin Cities that could have signed up in Duluth for a second event, and they just didn't. So, or in Winona, it was open to 48, and people just didn't want the spots.
I do know that there were a number of teams from out of state that had spots that canceled their spots because of the ice activity. And so I'm guessing that while those spots opened up for week 1, teams have already made their plans, and they already knew that they had already planned that, hey, we're not competing week 1. We've got an extra week to work on a robot, or they had already reserved their hotels and didn't want to take the effort to switch. So I believe that because of the number of teams that dropped out of traveling to Minnesota, that may have played a bigger role into the smaller regional, and it won't necessarily be reflective of what happens next year. We also had a third week 1 regional in Minnesota. So with having 3 week 1 regionals in Minnesota, that's a lot of options for teams locally to be able to go and compete in.
Yeah, but none of them made it to 48, which is what they were basically hoping at the beginning. So that said, I mean, we have like 114 teams going to 2 events this year, which we've never had that many in the past. That's like 20 more than we've ever had. So we actually have more teams. Oh.
Sorry, John.
I was going to say Minnesota actually has more teams going to 2 events than any other state other than Texas, California, and Michigan. So that's all.
I wonder if more week 1 events will push participation in some of the following weeks. I know I work with an individual who mentors the Bird Island Olivia team, and they typically do Granite City, and they elected to do Winona this year. And they usually just do the 1 competition instead of 2.
Does anybody know if they're going to do week 7 again next year? Is that expected to be a permanent thing, or is that just who knows kind of weird first stuff?
I remember them doing it, I think, in 2017 as well. But I think it was just a weird quirk of the schedule of kickoff to champs.
My suspicion is they are, just because they pushed the champs back a few weeks.
Is that an Easter dependent thing? I've heard that kind of played about, or are there other factors that we don't really understand that are playing into that? Because like next year is similar to this year in that the first Saturday in January is January 2nd. So I sort of feel like that's not going to be a kickoff day because it's too early. So it's probably going to be January 9, whereas this year was January 10. So it's probably going to be really similar in the kind of like feel like it's a week late. And then everything drags on again. So I was just curious if it was going to have that, if anybody knew from prior experience. Maybe it's just a guessing game. Because I don't know. It just all feeds back into the idea that like maybe we don't need 3 Minnesota week 1s, but it'd be nice to have them spread out over, a couple, like a week 2 or another week 3. But that may not be. That's probably more at the whims of the venues than anything.
The reason why we had 3 week 1s is because the only opportunity to be at Mankato was over their spring break, which was week 1. So that was the only week available to be on their campus, and it just happened to be week 1.
And by Mankato, you mean Winona?
Oh, sorry, Winona.
Yeah, I think First has booked Houston for the next 3 years, right? They have the dates, and they're not changing. I think part of it is for like district teams that don't know they qualify until week 6 at the district championships, to give them a little time to find the money or whatever they need to do. So I think it's going to maintain its status quo here as of late.
Well, I think that it shows them that having 3 week 1 events in Minnesota probably isn't the best for Minnesota teams in general, and that there would be an option to maybe hold it somewhere else where we could offer that up to have 2 in a week like we do with Duluth rather than trying to throw 3 in 1 week.
I agree. I know the spot.
Venues are hard. I mean, the reason why it was at Winona, sorry, not Mankato, Winona, was because we were trying to get a regional in the southern part of the state because lacrosse went away, with Wisconsin going to districts. So I know that the planning committee spent a lot of time trying to find a venue in the south part of the state. and Winona was the best option, and they were 62, only one option for what week to play. I think it really comes down to the venue. I think that's always going to decide when you can hold the regional, and then of course first has to agree to that week. So it'll be interesting to see if the planning committee can come up with a different option or a different week based on where they can find to host the regional. For those that went, so I know 2530 went. Tell us all about this brand new regional. What was it like? What was the venue like? What was the event like? We only had 18 Minnesota teams, I heard, out of all of the teams that went to Winona.
I can speak up if Arden, do you want to say anything, or would you rather me talk? Arden's our student.
You can talk first.
Please add your perspective at the end, Arden. The venue itself was really nice. For the most part, except on Saturday, plenty of parking, which was free. And it's just outside of the main town of Winona and on a campus. So there were lots of dining options within the building, including a preset meal that you could pay ahead of time, like cafeteria style. So all those logistics that you don't think about until you have to think about were a little bit easier. And the pits were very close to the field, connected by basically a doorway and crossing a hallway, a little bit narrow for the robots to go through, but basically really easy to get to and fro, same level. And so the noise in the pits was not bombastic with all the music, which is what we're all dreading for Mariucci. And so that was sanity. And the actual field was really nice, with I think pretty abundant seating, maybe again on the finals day a little bit short, but very nice. We liked the venue quite a bit, to be honest with you, and would go back for the liking of the venue alone. Yeah, Arden, I think I can't remember. I didn't get the final count of the Minnesota teams. Tons of Illinois teams and Iowa teams, and we really enjoyed that mix of people as well.
Yeah, I basically have the same thoughts. I mean, in the pits, you probably could have fit another 10 teams if you needed a bigger event, or we need. It wasn't warm as really warm everywhere, which was nice, and yeah, food was pretty good.
How was the weather down in Winona? Did you guys have any travel problems?
Nope, warmer than expected. A little bit of rain, thunder. Oh, we did have a field fault because of a thunderstorm when we were on the field. At least we think it was because of the thunderstorm, but that was about it. A little power surge, but maybe that was unrelated. Who knows? But yeah, no problems.
We had a heck of a time with fog up in Duluth coming in on Wednesday night, and then I'm pretty sure it was foggy all of Thursday as well. The last hour of the drive was very foggy getting in. At least for us it was. And then by the morning there was a half an inch of ice on all the trees, and the sidewalks were very treacherous. But thankfully coming home was really nice. So once again, no blizzard in Duluth. 2 years in a row without a blizzard. That's nice for a change.
I want to ask something about the practice fields at Duluth. So we noticed that the April tags on the towers were very cockeyed, and we could not get our autonomouses to work correctly with vision enabled. So I was just wondering if anybody else had similar issues up at Duluth.
Yeah, Phil, we just unplugged our cameras on the practice field because anything that you were trying to run for a path would completely get thrown off and the robot would go crazy. And we just had to use odometry and hope things worked out okay. Yeah, the April tags were not good.
Yeah, same here.
I-
Pretty much just basically all you could really validate was like that the logic worked, not that it drove the actual like correct inches and meters and things, and just say, okay, logically it's picking up tags and fusing them in, or whatever, helping localize, and hopefully the real field works. And that's about where we left it.
That's good to know. I'm in charge of the practice field for 10K. I will do my best to make sure that those tags are correct. I'm pretty sure 2 years ago when we were at 10K, we had the same problem where the April tags were not even in the right spot. They were an inch too low or something, and we just changed them. We just maybe we shouldn't have, I don't know, but we just were like, well, these are wrong. We're going to fix it. But for anyone going to 10K, if you encounter something like that, let me know, and I will do my best to whatever it is we can do to correct that. I will attempt to do that. I'll bring tape if we can't. We'll take the screws out. We'll tape it up and put them in the right spot if we have to.
Now
Speaking
that
of-
I've done field setup, I can tell you that like a couple of field setup people are assigned to do that, and just maybe emphasizing to them that precision is warranted when they do that would be something that maybe not everybody would know, because they're often parents, or at least at our venue there. I mean, it was two of our mentors, but that did the practice field, but it could be parents, right? It could be somebody like that, and they may not know that that is a really important thing. So maybe the field setup coordinator can emphasize that to the people who build the practice field if it's not already one that's been built ahead of time.
Speaking of April tags, did anyone else in Duluth need to adjust their camera? Because the most important two April tags on the field were in very dark shadows. I know that our team had to adjust our camera, and I think we talked to a few other teams that said, yeah, we'd change our exposure in order to be able to have the camera pick up the April tag. I did make a comment to both Nicole and to Curtis that the lighting on the field is problematic when the primary two April tags are not well lit or lit at all. I don't know. I find the lighting in Duluth frustrating probably more often than not. Last year, we were on Northern Lights, but I know on the Lake Superior side, because it was a water themed game, the lights were tinted blue. And there was a significant discrepancy between the lighting on the Northern Lights side of the curtain and the Lake Superior side of the curtain. And I found that frustrating that they were inconsistent when the fields were only 50 feet apart. But I don't know if anyone else feels the same way, but that was one of the frustrations I had.
Well, I noticed
Yes.
that team from Turkey, the overcharge that everyone's watching, they just have a big LED light on their bot, and I don't really want to go back to the LED era of these robots blinding us, but if the fields can't get consistent lighting, it's a really attractive, or we've thought about it, like just fighting it at every venue is so annoying. And like you said, Scott, just the different sides or angles. I know at state last year we ran into something where it's like two faces were different enough where we couldn't see, why is our auto scoring failing on two faces? Oh, okay. Like it's this exposure thing. And even for field calibration, you end up like moving the robot around the whole thing, checking every single spot I care about, and I don't know what the solution is, but it's a problem.
What do you guys think about I'm just curious how you feel like from a spectator perspective? Is this a fun game to watch, or is it because it's just like one kind of evolved to be one task? Is it less interesting?
I will say from a lot of the families that I've worked with, and in my role, I'm a mentor on 24/72. I'm also the booster president. So at tournaments, because my mentor role is more focused on the finance side, I'm more of the meet and greet and work with parents who are coming up maybe for the first time. And for our parents that have been to multiple events and have been with us for many years, they thought this was less exciting than other years. And it may be the one-dimensional scoring type for the most part, but many of them preferred previous years where we had more than one type of scoring, particularly last year when we had coral and algae that teams could score. I think it was maybe a little harder for them to keep track of what was happening because when fuel was scored, it tended to be very rapid. That's that perspective.
From a perspective of a robot nerd that's been doing this for a long time, I was going back and forth. I wasn't playing over in Duluth. I was watching over in Duluth, and I was going back and forth all the time between the curtain, and I thought it was cool. I mean, the crowd is counting down the seconds to, hub activity and inactivity. Like the whole crowd is getting into it. That anticipation of oh, now it's their turn. Like the cheers going back and forth between the crowd was cool. Yeah, it's pretty one-dimensional. It'd be cool if there was like a charged up in game where like the cliffhanger of the leveling of the whatever it was called, switch or whatever the hell it was called. But yeah, I don't know. It seems like crowd involvement was cool. A lot of stuff happening at the same time is kind of exciting, but it's just, it's a lot of balls in the air, and ultimately that's maybe not super exciting for everybody.
I like this game a lot. I think any robot that is a good demo bot for little kids, the game's going to be a better game than putting a pipe on a pipe. But I will say that I think that the lack of suspense about who wins because the end game just isn't being leveraged, I think that takes away from this game. If I think back to some of the other things that First had done throughout the match to take, for example, power up with the balance beams and the cubes that you were sticking up on the balance beams, it wasn't a terribly exciting game, but the power up aspect of that, of being able to double your points or to be able to lock somebody out of points, that added an interesting dynamic to the game that I think made it more interesting than it would have been. And I think that the shifts thing here just didn't add an additional level of excitement. I think it just sort of created a pause in waiting for your robot to be able to score again. But I also think that might evolve. I think that as the weeks go on and we see different strategies come out, I think there might be less about, oh, now I have to wait 20 seconds to see something interesting from my robot, to something where, okay, now our robot is going to go do an entirely different job. And it might be more than just pushing balls. Maybe there's something else that's going to evolve here.
I know we already touched on this, but I'm kind of curious on the defense. What we saw is more effective, whether man or zone, and just staying in the other alliance zone was more effective or less effective.
I think that was really dependent on how many teams could actually score. Because, I mean, on our final alliance, like, Lightning Turtles was the only scorer. So it was man defense. But I believe Wingnuts played more zone defense against Megahertz and Full Metal Jackets.
I think it also depends on who's playing defense, right? Some of these bots that play defense did a really excellent job with just one bot, could really do a great job of disrupting 2 or 3 scorers, and did a really nice job. If you haven't seen it, I would go watch Finals Match 2 for Northern Lights. Something very interesting happened there for defense, where all 3 robots wouldn't play defense. And that was the first time I had seen that I didn't see it through calls. I didn't see it anywhere else in playoffs. And I don't want to say shut down scoring, but made a huge dent in what was scored. And I'm really curious to know if that's going to be sort of a meta play going forward, that when you're on your shift, everybody scores or gathers balls. And when you're off your shift, everybody goes and plays defense or tries to clear out the balls out of the opponent's end. I wish we would have seen that earlier, because I think that I would have liked to have seen the evolution of that a little bit more.
Can you tell us how that, if you know how that evolved? Because that was pretty noticeable as a, unique match and for defense. And I didn't know how much of it was that on purpose and pre-planned versus an act in the moment of it, but it was a pretty noticeable strategy.
I don't know because I haven't talked to our drive coach to know how that evolved. I suspect it was planned. One thing that, again, I have no idea what happened, but I will say historically, when Nightcrawler loses a match in playoffs or something like that, they're like, okay, we have to try something very different. Instead of saying we just need to be better, we have typically tried something different. We have a new drive coach this year, so I don't know if that happened again or not. If that was a repeat of sort of a pattern in the past, but I don't know. I don't know the answers to that. I don't know if it was accidental or a spur of the moment, or if it was planned well in advance. I'm not sure.
I could talk a little bit about D just since it was basically our game. Like Turtles said, or Phil said, we had one scorer. I mean, we scored. We came back and scored on O through most of playoffs, and then we would play D on our off cycle, and we did that all regional. However, in finals, we ended up going with a strategy in finals 1 where we're going to play D on both of their 2 tanks of Megahertz and Full Metal. And we basically assigned man D for that. And it was a tight match. We lost by, I don't know, 10 points or something. And good for Turtles. They stayed super calm with it and said we were going to switch strategy, and we did switch strategy in finals 2 and 3 then to on our on cycle we just played counter D and we kept the D off of them as much as possible for them to score, and then on our off cycle we would play D again and we just go back and forth. And for D, I don't know, like there's some weird places playing just bump D where you don't let a tall robot in is by far the best. We actually in finals 1, it was terrible. We ended up shutting down a major field element penalty called on us where we played double bump D for too much time, clearly. And we pulled the penalty. We weren't trying to do it. It just, when you're playing man D, you don't realize it happens until it already has happened. So if you're going to go that route, be careful that you don't shut down both bumps on 2 tall robots. I think on the other side, they didn't have to worry about that as much because Patriotics was a very good tank trench bot, so they didn't need to use the bump. But yeah, there's definitely some key spots where robots want to shoot from, and trying to get them off of that, hiding in the trench. You can either sit there and, like, as 3630 said earlier, hit them and run away and hit them and run away, or come back out of it and push them from the short side of the trench or from the neutral side of the trench and get them pushed out of there. But yeah, D was definitely a huge part of the game. I would say we practiced going into Lake Superior driving more on the opponent side of the field than we did on our side of the field, knowing that's what we were going to be doing. And we had the advantage, I guess, of being able to go to Becker, who had a full field. And we already knew the sight lines on how bad they were in certain spots and what alliance stations were going to be best for D. And we put our wraparound pick wing nuts in the very best station, which is station 1. We took station 3, which is the second best, and station 2 is absolutely terrible.
Yeah, we're kind of the 2847. We're the tank, kind of the tank archetype with the triple shooter. And I gotta say, like, the bump is, especially when your hopper's full, trying to zip over that bump and someone's playing on it, very frustrating. I think that's really good. It just depends on where people can shoot from too. So like we for example have the shoot from anywhere. So the zone isn't quite as effective. It's more effective to wait for us to like wind up and we're halfway through the stream, then hit, because it's really hard to anticipate as the person shooting, when should I stop, when am I about to get disrupted, all that. And then the man, I don't know, we were wedging ourselves in the trench a lot, which you can draw the pins really easily with that, but at the end of the day, like, just the way this field is designed and no protected zones, defense is going to disrupt. It just is. The scores will be lower. It will disrupt, and it's the difference between, can you handle it with either about blowing up, or can you at least get some portion in before it disrupts you? So at least that was our experience.
One of the things that worried me about that defense strategy that we used for finals 2, when you get 5 or 6 robots in one zone, you can't get 6 feet away. It's not possible. There's just no place to go. I was very worried when I saw all of our robots coming to the one end, playing defense. I was like, man, we're going to get a ton of penalties if we can't get 6 feet away. I don't know that we actually did, and maybe it was because we didn't make contact long enough to start the pinning count. But I'm curious to know if this strategy, it may play better in one regional than another regional, just simply about how the referees decide what's a pin and what's 6 feet away, because there isn't enough room to maneuver when you've got 6 robots on one end of the field. I can't remember ever having a game where you could have more than one robot in the opponent's alliance zone. So that's a very different part of this game this year.
I can share in alliance selection that one of the things that, we were not a captain, but we provided some of our, stats to that, is looking at who are considered some of the top threats, and then picking an alliance partner that was previously able to successfully defend against some of the top robots. And technocrats wound up cutting their hopper down so they could get under the trench between qualifications and playoffs to help contribute further to the alliance.
That's some serious dedication. I have to say that the matches that had defense at Bluff Country were by far the most crowd beloved and got the most crowd into it than not. So, just added to the I think just broke up the monotony, so to speak, of just endless shooting. Not to make it sound boring.
On the topic of defense and bump defense, did anybody see penalties from people going inside of frame perimeters when they're going over the bump or playing defense and having an opponent's robot go into their frame then?
Yeah, definitely we did. Our intake, when we're level on the ground, it can't physically go inside another bot. Maybe our hopper kind of can, but when we're going over the bump, it definitely can. And we made the mistake of going over the bump, intake first, into a defensive bot, and racked up 20 points at least of penalties. And it's just okay, that's the lesson. Lead backwards first, and you just have to avoid it. I mean, part of driving well in this game is protecting your mechanisms, because things go out of your frame, and you have to be careful that even though you're playing offense, you're the one racking up penalties against your defender.
I'm not positive. I wasn't necessarily tuned into the match 100%. But when Alliance 3 got red carded, I'm fairly sure it was an offensive robot going over a bump, landing on a short defensive robot and just ripping him to shreds inside of him. And they killed the robot, and that's red carded, done. I'm fairly sure that's what happened on that one. And it was crazy in finals. I mean, Turtles ended up on a short robot, and we dropped everything we possibly could do at that moment to try to get them off of that robot to make sure we didn't disable the D-bot. And that was the whole entire thing, is just please let that D-bot still be alive after we get off of them. Because if not, you lose. You can't come over the bump and end up inside of a robot.
Well, it's hard too, because if someone's playing bump defense on you, you're incentivized to try to zip through as fast as you can before they can react. So there's this kind of game you have to play where you're trying to push through really fast, but not Dukes a hazard on top of them. And so it's a tense driver moment every time you kind of hold your breath and hang on tight.
One of the things that we discussed, and I think the kickoff week when we started talking about kind of what the archetypes would be, what the strategies would be, is we talked about the starvation play for defense where you're in the center zone and you're shooting balls back. That didn't seem to happen. There weren't a lot of robots that seemed to be doing that. It was a lot of shuttling. I remember there was that conversation of, are you going to go load up with bots and then drive over and shoot? Or are you going to pass them? Is there going to be passing bots? And I'm curious to know what happened at Lake Superior and at Bluff Country Regionals. Was there a lot of passing or was there a lot mostly shuttling?
At Lake Superior, it was a lot more shuttling, I would say.
Yeah, pushing under the trench. That was the norm.
Oh yeah, okay. Yes, there was a ton of pushing on the trench, but I guess what I meant was shooting. Were there a lot of robots that were shooting back into the Alliance zone? And I will say that pushing, I mean, I think in the Slack here, Ryan Swanson may have said in the Minnesota Mentor Slack of he wants to see somebody make a 12-inch wide by 30 some, or not 30, but like 60 some inch wide robot, where you're just a big snowplow and you're just pushing into the trench. The plowing part definitely seemed to work very, very well. I guess I'm more interested in where people shooting across the bumps and filling their Alliance zone that way too.
I think the most common we saw, if it was going to happen, it was from like a triple barrel shooter like Megahertz. They already had a whole hopper full, which is a crap ton of fuel, and they still had time. So they would just, unload their entire hopper by like pulling up to the trench or bump and just spitting it out onto the other side and then go get another hopper. And then they were on O. But like no one was like necessarily like single stream shooting one over at a time or something. It was, my hopper's full. I have nothing else to do. I'm going to unload 50 fuel to the other side in seconds because I can. I mean, the triple barrel shooters were, they're going to be always used throughout the future weeks. Like they're not going away.
I think at Bluff Country, I don't, Arden, correct me if I'm wrong, but there was definitely shuttling, but it wasn't a ton. A couple of bots, I think, had it as something that was worth doing, and used it wisely. And personally, again, I didn't watch every match, but I can remember 2 matches that I did watch where I felt like the starvation technique had happened, where all of the balls were on one Alliance side, for the most part, and the neutral zone was pretty deprived of anything, and it was just scraps, and otherwise it just was ball chaos most of the time. But there were a couple of matches where I felt like effective movement of balls into one zone was depriving another team.
I mean, I was definitely not in Winona. I did watch some of the matches back. I watched a playoff match where a triple barrel shooter was passing an entire hopper into their zone, and a defensive bot, I'll call them a defensive bot because they were in the opponent zone, was basically in a way picking up the fuel they were passing and passing it back into the neutral zone. It was like that just would have never happened at Lake Superior, I guess, because we didn't have that many bots that could do that. Instead, it was just smash and bash into robots. It was just kind of funny to see that they had so many higher scoring potential robots, and what they did with them was pass it into the Alliance zone, and that robot picked them up and passed it right back where it came from. It was like, oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, I think there were a couple matches for us where we would just run out of fuel in the Alliance zone and neutral zone just because the other side wasn't scoring, so it wasn't coming back into the neutral zone.
Yeah, that was another huge takeaway for us from this game is when the other alliance is scoring more, it actually makes you score more. It's less about starvation because you can just go and get them all in the middle. That's when they build up against the alliance walls where you really start feeling starved more. And especially if you're a tall bot going over both bumps just to get a hopper full, just scary. We did it once or twice and it's like, get out of there. We can't see. It's scary. But So it seems like the higher the other alliance is scoring, the more that gets dumped in the middle, the more you can immediately pick up and pass to your side.
I was going to point out in that 7:30 match, the high score match right now, there is a bot just sitting in the middle, picking them up and shooting them back. So I don't know if you can get it to where it's not, you can't really hurt them because they're so getting shot so much, maybe, but.
Yeah, I noted that as well. Their teammate is literally sitting where they can't catch them, but they just roll to them basically. And as they roll to them out of the hub, they're picking them up and shooting them right back. Like at the world's level or next week or whenever, I would think if you're the opponent there, you're pretty highly incentivized on your off cycle to not be letting that robot sit there. Like you should be hitting that robot or also taking the fuel and passing it back or doing something, but you can't let them just pass the fuel right back to Citrus that Citrus just made.
Yep. Scott, I got a touchy question for you. There was a long deliberation at the end of finals match 3 on lights. Do you have any insight on what that was about and how that went down?
Yes, but I'm trying to want to remain as positive as I can. There was contact inside the frame perimeter, but a referee didn't see it. Of course, we don't allow video replay. I would say go back and watch finals 3. Had that been called, had it been decided how about that? Had it could have gone one of two ways. Either it finished the way that it finished, and congrats to No Mythic and Patriotics and Nine for giving the other team for winning the alliance, or they could have called a yellow card for contact inside the perimeter, in which case that would have turned into a red card because they already had a yellow card and we would have won. Nobody wants to win that way. Nobody wants to lose that way. It was going to be a bad situation regardless. The way that it turned out was that the referees didn't see it, so they didn't call it. And that's the way it goes. I mean, we've lost plenty of playoff matches and finals matches because somebody got broke or something. We got hit on the frame right next to our radio, right next to our Robo Rio. It caused the Robo Rio to reboot. We were down for 42 seconds. And then when it came up, the odometry had no idea where it was. And so it turned out the turret was pointing away from the goal. We had some limelight issues, so we only have the one limelight on our turret. So as they were turning the robot to try to get it to point at an April tag to fix the odometry, it kept pointing away from the hub because it thought it was pointing the wrong direction. And so we weren't able to score the entire rest of the match because the rover rebooted. Lessons learned there on our coding stuff. We could have done better. We have no idea why adding a second limelight caused our network traffic to do loop overruns all the time. We didn't have enough time for our programmers to work with the finished robot. Things happen. So that's what the deliberation was about. I think every referee was involved. The head ref was involved. The FTAs were involved. Well, not one of the two FTAs. Our primary FTA was a Nightcrawler, so he was obviously not involved with any of those discussions. But that was what's going on. They were trying to decide what they wanted to do. They kept talking to us. I know that the alliance, the number one alliance, the China team, they were pushing really hard on the referees. I think we were doing less of that. Again, this is all third-hand information. I didn't get to talk to our drivers very much after the thing was over. So grain of salt. But those are the things that happen. That's just kind of the way the ball bounces with a lot of these things in playoffs, especially when you get into this aggressive play. Things happen. That's the way it worked out.
Yeah, thanks for clarifying, because we didn't sit in the stands. That's kind of was my thought of probably what the deliberation was, but you don't get any information up there, so
Yeah.
I was just curious.
It was just a really weird, unique situation where there was already a yellow card for playoffs. another yellow card would have been a disastrous result, and it would have tremendously shifted the outcome of that match. And the referees took the time they needed to talk to the right people, to take a close look at the robot, to try to get the call as accurate as they could without the use of video replay, because that's not allowed. So, yeah, it is what it is. That's the way things go. I was going to ask, I had a question all lined up, and now I've forgotten what it is. We've got about 15 minutes left here. Is there anything that we haven't discussed that people really were holding till the end? Because now is the time to bring up those topics.
I guess I was curious of how people, after seeing just a week one play out with the value of the climb and who's doing it, is anyone kind of bummed out that it seems like L3 is going to be very, very rare, or are we going to see it tick up as it goes? I mean, you know, as a team, we've kind of like discussed, like, if the climb was double what it's worth, it'd be way worth pursuing much more aggressively. But at this point, you know, do we just cut, you know, sunk costs and stop? Or I'm kind of curious how our teams are feeling about that.
I think the most value of the climb is the RP, which is indicative of how valuable it is.
I haven't talked to our students yet. I know that we have some students who worked on the climber that we did not end up putting on a robot that would really like to see the climber go on the robot, and I don't blame them, right? You worked on it. You want to see that mechanism go on there. I don't know how the rest of our build students are feeling about it, but I think ultimately, if we don't start to see half the robots doing climb by week 4, I don't know why we would put it on for our week 5 competition. Because if you can't get it for the ranking point, you're better off shooting. I don't know. It'd be really interesting. I think that I would really like to see our team build an L1 climber that's super reliable, because we might need it for champs. We did qualify for champs. We know that we're going. And so even if we don't need it for North Star, we might need it for champs, and we might need it for state. I think it'll be really curious to see how climb evolves the next few weeks.
Scott, you said an L1 climber there. You're not thinking L3, or you are thinking L3 as well? Just L1?
I think we're thinking L1. I think we're banking on the fact that if we're just going for the ranking point. So 2 auto climbs, 2 tele-out climbs.
Yep.
Hopefully, if somebody can do an L1 climb at all, they probably have the resources and the programming chops to be able to do it in auto. So I think that's that's what I'm thinking. I don't know what my build students are thinking, because we haven't really talked about it now. We were planning on having an L1 climb for Duluth. We were planning on it because we wanted to be able to do that L1 in auto and to do it in teleop and hope we were getting matched up with somebody. But after having seen week 0, where no one Blaine attempted to climb, but they were the only ones. Nobody else attempted to climb. Most week 0s had no climbs. We really thought, wow, there's other places we can put our time. And we took the climber off for Duluth.
Yeah, I was going to say, we climbed in, I don't know, quite a few matches, and it was super easy. We literally have a climber in a box. You slap a hook straight vertical. We don't even go outside a frame perimeter, and you can grab the bar with a hook or a opening or whatever, and your bumpers keep you on. Like, it's super easy to do. But again, there were matches where it wasn't even worth climbing. Like, we still had fuel in the hopper, and it's like, we are going to get more points just unloading the hopper than it is to go get these 10. And our turret quite didn't have the rotation on it to be able to climb and shoot. So, ideally for week 6, we would be able to do that, where we could be sitting on the bar and shooting the rest of our hopper instead of not doing it, I guess. But yeah, we I guess on the practice field got a auto climb programmed on Friday morning. So it wasn't that hard to do. It was practice field, but again, we just never saw a ton of desire to run it in a qual match because the fuel out in the neutral zone is just way too valuable to let sit out there. And the weird hidden thing that people don't realize is there's only so many times you can score, and we almost always used our 10 seconds. We were one of the few robots that I felt like that used the 10 seconds after auto to score. We always had a hopper, and we always started shooting with 5 seconds left and got rid of as many as we could to get a few extra points sneaked out, I guess. And if you're sitting hanging on a hook or on a bar, those are points that are just lost to you. Yep, you got 15 for the climb, but what did you miss out on the 10 seconds after auto? You missed out on something.
Yeah, we did the same thing where we always had a hopper coming back from after auto. We always had a hopper that we scored after auto. So yeah, I agree with you. I think the only reason to do it is because you're with somebody who can reliably climb L1 as well in auto. It's to try to get that extra ranking point. I don't think it's going to be very often. I honestly don't, and I don't even know if it's going to be very often at champs, honestly. So,
Well, and I don't know, like just game strategy aspect, I guess if people are curious on it, we just felt like winning auto was so important. It was much harder when you were on O instantly. Like we were fortunate. If you look at any of our stats, we played D basically in every single one of our matches to start. We won auto almost always. And it helped us because we were a D bot. So they didn't have as many fuel on their side of the field, and they had to come to the neutral zone. And if they had to come to the neutral zone, we could bump D them, not letting them back in their zone. And that once that happened, you could get yourself a little bit of momentum going, push the fuel back when you had to play O, and that made a huge difference. So it was like there was just never a reason to run a climb auto when you needed to get to the neutral zone as fast as you could.
I remember my question. I'm curious to know if any teams are considering making significant changes to the robot after week 1. Anybody out there planning on making any significant changes? I will say that I don't know what our build captains have planned. I know that they want to make some changes, but I'm not sure that I anticipate major changes other than potentially trying to work on a climber.
Scott, I can't speak for week 1 because we have a competition next week, but we competed at week 0, and we had a turret and 2 climbers, and right now we have a big dumper without a climber on it. So we did pretty much a complete rebuild in 2 weeks. So I think depending on what a start what you have for your robot now and what you've seen in week 1, I think we will see rebuilds. But our team rebuilt from week 0 to week 1.
I can say 2472 is meeting just before this call, and as a support mentor, I'm not on those calls, but I know a Spindex or something. We've noticed we can usually get 7 out of the 8 in autos, but that 8th ball just usually doesn't move. Trying to work on some sort of mechanism that would help, move that and additional scoring in other capacities as well.
Yeah, I can speak to that. It's just generally in increasing fuel per second in whichever way we feel we can. And it's kind of between fixing our indexer or going to a double or triple shooter.
My kids, they were all talking about all kinds of things coming on the way home, and I said, well, I'm not talking about robots. I'm going to enjoy our first blue banner in a regional. They had all kinds of ideas. I do know, like 2503 at Lake Superior, they said 7 days before the regional, they had a turret on the back of theirs. And I mean, they had a triple barrel shooter, and they were a dang good tank with it. I mean, it was raw. I mean, they had C clamps holding things on, and that's how it held in place. And they were dang good robot with very, very, very little practice time on it. I mean, just a giant drum that shoots out tons of fuel. I don't know how many rebuilds will exist of those, but it's going to be a lot of them, I'm sure.
We've got a mentor on No Mythic who, at the very beginning of the design season, showed the design team a picture of the robot that we built for Popcorn Premiere and said, just build this. And it turns out that that is what Citrus Circuits built. So it's possible that we're going to take out the lane dividers in our triple barrel shooter. So, and make our intake a little less. I want to put Nightcrawler's intake on the robot is what I want to do. It's a gorgeous machine.
Speaking of rebuilds, fun, maybe not fun story at all, actually, quite scary story. The team from Shanghai, 6907, shared with us that their flight to China was canceled. And so they had their new flight gets back, and 24 hours after they get back, they start their second regional.
Okay.
And they had to take the robot apart to get it here. So I don't know how much they're going to be taking apart to get it home. But that just sounds terrifying.
Jesus.
Absolutely.
I want to, on the same topic of rebuilding, I got a fix-it tool a year ago that I've had in my back pocket for a long time, and I think it earned its $50 of total cost. Is those hot staples, those heated staple things, little like not induction, the word, yeah, induction heated staple things. It's like two little pins that are two little posts that you can insert a little like metal staple into, and the staple's got like some kind of weird shape depending on what you're using it for. You press a button on the device, heats it up to almost red hot within a couple seconds, and then you melt it into the plastic. You can use it to stitch stuff together, or reinforce broken things, or put multi-part 3D prints together. Our intake broke off on the right side of our robot. Like it broke off at the pivot. It like cracked 1/4 inch thick polycarbonate all the way through. And for the entire time that between finals match 1 and 2, and then 2 and 3, I was my upper torso inside the robot, putting as many staples into that joint as I possibly could. I didn't count them, but I think I was as surprised as anyone else to learn that it had survived. So,
Clay, where did you find this, and what is it called?
Yes, please link that in the chat.
It was amazing. I will find it right now. Sorry.
I think they're usually called plastic welders.
Yeah, the specific information would be really appreciated. Then, for sure.
Yes. I was frustrated already because I'm not a fan of moving to the field side until I'm there, because it's fun there, but also it's a terrible place to try to fix a robot on the side of the field. It is dark, it is loud, it is crazy, and you don't have all your tools with you. So the spare polycarbonate that I would have just bolted on over the joint and lap jointed it, I was back in the pit. I forgot that we had it. I have lots of opinions about it. We don't need to hear them right now.
Okay, well, it is 8:30, so hopefully Clay will have an answer for us before we log off here, but otherwise I'm sure he can post it in the FRC Mentor Slack from Minnesota. Otherwise,
we'll get you there. I'll post the one that we have in FRC Slack.
Okay, excellent. So if you're a part of that, hopefully you find it there. Otherwise, contact No Mythic and send them an email somehow. You must have something on your website, right, Clay? Or
we do, yeah.
Socials.
Info at mythicalrobotics.org.
There you go. So with that, I'm going to do a final call. Does anybody have any last minute things they'd like to say, or questions they might want to ask?
I was going to ask what everybody thought about the supercharged RP threshold, because out of the 3 Minnesota regionals, it was achieved once.
Yep. Once, and If you would have counted the playoffs, I don't know if there were how many more would have been added, but yeah, during quals, just the one time, and not by very much either, just barely.
Yeah,
But isn't that par for the course for week one? I mean, that hardest rank point, it seems like that's about how many times it gets achieved in Minnesota the first week.
Yeah, but I feel like getting all the ranking points happens only once. But we're talking about only getting more than one of the bonus ranking points, because the climb is, unless you're Blaine and you get a penalty, nobody got that ranking point.
I mean, could it be that they wanted, the 100 threshold to be potentially achievable by one robot, and then if 3 robots could barely achieve that 100 points that are on one qual alliance together, then it's 120 per robot that is needed.
Maybe. So I went back and looked at it. The super ranking point was achieved. We got that one in our match, and it was 388. So we didn't cross that 360 by much, and I'm pretty sure we had 100 coming out of auto. So you really need to have a really, really amazing auto to even have a shot at that super ranking, super bonus, whatever that thing is called. One final thing I want to say here before we log off, I should have brought this up earlier, but I talked to a lot of mentors and coaches at both Lake Superior and Northern Lights. And, there seemed to be a very, very, very common theme of everyone feels like they're a week behind. I was talking to Sam with Stampede, and he and I shared a very, I think, an apt comment about how the reveal came out. We're like, oh, it's one game piece. Oh, it's a ball. We know how to deal with a ball. We're good. This will be fine. And then everyone that I talked to seems like they felt like they were a week behind. I'm just curious here. Does everyone here feel the same way, that something snuck up on us and this suddenly got much more harder than we were anticipating by week 1, week 2? Yeah,
I would agree.
I'm seeing a lot of thumbs up here for those who are listening on the podcast. Do we think that's because of the perimeter? Do we think it's because the ball is half a pound and it didn't behave the way that we've seen game elements behave in the past?
I think. Go for it.
Yeah. On T30 said it was just the size, fitting everything in compact, and we felt ahead, but then we had to do a full rebuild in 2 weeks, so that put us way. Up until that point, like, we had a good handle on getting balls through, but that's what made it.
I think anybody who spent a lot of time or a decent amount of time on L3 quickly realized how hard it really was. It looks kind of hard in the reveal, but actually doing it, when you start looking at the bumpers and the frame and fitting it in and how it affects your hop bridges, I know that set us back a lot of trying to build around it. And then just trying to hit those high fire rates. It was easy to see these prototypes that are shooting 4 or 5 through a second, and then you're seeing clips from other teams who are pushing 10, 15, 20 through. And at least for us, that was a huge, I don't want to say distraction, but it was something we chased a long time. Can we get a prototype that, just trying to push these numbers higher and higher, version 6, version 7, version 8, and then before finally locking in.
And to that end, once you got that, did it work every time without jamming? That was in itself. I mean, for us, it came down to a little tiny rubber wheel in one iteration. It had to be right in the right spot. We figured out after looking at it, and then making a 3D printed part or something that replaced that later. But it's just the time spent trying to make sure it worked every time.
I think this year it's really easy to keep trying to design and iterate a better robot. At the start of the season, we're gonna say we're gonna do all this stuff, and then try to design it. We can make these improvements, and then we kind of forgot to give any time to programming. They got like a week and a half. So, yeah, keeping within a reasonable scope is difficult.
Yeah, even like copying off of 254's indexer design, there was still, I would say, a week of just troubleshooting jams with the prototype. And then even on whenever we built the full scale one, we still had issues with jamming that we had to solve.
I think indexing has always been a challenge for Nightcrawler, and I warned. That was my one biggest piece of warning, is that don't save indexing till the end with our design team, because in the time that I've been on the team, it's sort of, we figured out how to get them off the ground, we figured out how to shoot them, and now what goes in between was always a decision at the end. And so I think we did a good job of not waiting till the end on this Spindexer, but as Nate said, we just kept tweaking and poking. The smallest little modification made the biggest difference in a lot of cases. The other thing that really hung us up was our energy chain on our turret. Shockingly complicated, and to make it reliable, and when it still isn't reliable. I feel like that's a problem that's been solved so many times, and yet we struggle with that, and we're still struggling with that. That was sort of a surprise for us. I would say that at week 3, we felt like we were a week ahead of schedule, and probably by the end of week 4, week 4.5, we felt like we were a week behind schedule. It was very odd. Things did not go in a typical fashion where you just slowly, progressively get later and later and later, and you're running behind. I feel like suddenly we hit a wall and we're stuck. I don't know if other teams experienced that type of thing, but it felt like we were making really good progress, and then we hit a wall, and we were spending a lot of time troubleshooting the same issue over and over and over again. I am very pleased with how it turned out, but it was a very close thing. We saw our first autonomous routine work at 4:45 on Wednesday night. We let them run it 6 more times, and then we packed up the trailer and got to Duluth, and we loaded in at 8:55 p.m. So we cut it very close to the end, but we did not do our programmers a service with helping them get the robot when we had planned to get them a robot. And honestly, it was even a little bit later than it typically is.
We had the same problem, and our programmers had the robot. And they had a chassis stable robot for maybe a week and a half longer than they had the rest of it. But our first qual match ran an auto that our robot got whacked in the middle of, like got knocked off track, and it recovered and found its way to its shooting set point. It was like, I was like, wait, I didn't know they could do that. Who planned that? So that, I think a lot of our success at this tournament was because of our programmers and how much work they put in ahead of time to be able to like plug stuff into the robot, or deploy code and go. Basically, it was impressive.
All right, we're over time, but I do want to say one last call. Anybody have any other comments they want to stick in here before we wrap it up tonight? All right. Well, I appreciate everyone coming on, and thank you for everyone who contributed, because my voice is going out on me, and I really appreciate everyone keeping the conversation rolling so I didn't have to do all the talking tonight. Next week we're having Nightcrawler. We have a student and a mentor from Nightcrawler who's going to present on how we do a Girl Scout badge camp. So I think that's happening next week. But then after that, I'm really looking for some help. I'd love it if some teams here would be willing to step up and give presentation. All of you folks that did very well at these regionals, I'd love to have you do a get to know our team. You can talk about your process and how it went. If you haven't done one before, or you haven't even seen one before, you can go watch. There's multiples of the get to know my team in the past. But I'd love to have some people present. Also, I keep saying this. I've said this now probably 3 weeks in a row. I am going to schedule a show us your CAD. And I'd be looking for teams who are willing to come on here and have their build students or their design students go through and share their CAD model with the group and talk through some of the ways that they approach their design, or maybe how they solve some of their challenges, or simply just show something they're very proud of. Clay mentioned our intake. It's a 6-bar mechanism. I don't know that anybody on Nightcrawler had ever designed a 6-bar mechanism before. So if you've got something that's new and unique for your team, or something that you want to show off, I will send an email about that. I think might try to do that around the week 4-ish time frame. Maybe it'll be week 5, but I'll be looking for volunteers for that. But if you have something that you'd like to present or lead a conversation on, please sign up for a session so that we can keep the conversation going and I don't have to cancel any more roundtables. All right. With that, thank you, everyone. And I look forward to talking to you all next week. Have a good night.
Thanks.
That's it for this week's FRC Roundtable. Join us live all season long, every Sunday night. Visit the website at team2052.com/roundtable to sign up for weekly invites. In the meantime, keep building, keep learning, and we'll see you next week.